Namaste everyone. Today we are celebrating the International Yoga Day to raise awareness of the yogic practices and the impact of yoga in the life of every individual across the globe. We are sitting in this beautiful serene setting of Rishikesh to discuss more about yoga, what exactly yoga is. When we talk about yoga, we think of asana, pranayama and max to max meditation. But today we would like to know more that if yoga exceeds beyond these three parameters. So we have with us Hare Krsna Das. He's a monk from ISKCON Rishikesh. So we'll hear from him what exactly the yoga is.
Thank you, Rohan, for having me here, and wish all our audience a happy International Yoga Day. As we know that yoga practice is based on the ancient Vedic texts, especially texts like the Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, which describes the 8 different stages of yoga. But which describes yoga is a progressive path which goes through the 8 different levels and stages. But we should understand that yoga is a journey of transformation which results in a balance and harmony with the environment around us and with our inner self. The ancient texts of the Vedic tradition, they explain that the word yoga comes from the Sanskrit root yuj, which means to unite, and as is described in these traditional texts, yoga is a progression just like a ladder, where there are different stages which leads one to the highest stage of achievement of spiritual enlightenment. The initial stages being control or managing our mind, making the mind still of the different wanderings that it is almost always habituated to. When we practice this process of yoga, it helps us to balance our physical, mental, emotional and spiritual sides of our well-being, and in the process we purify our mind and our hearts to experience the world through a more cleansed vision, and we can use that to cultivate understanding wherein we live for the welfare and benefit of all around us. Yoga is a process of connecting, and not just within ourselves but with the nature, with the people around us, and also understanding our respective roles as part and parcels of something higher and bigger existence. Yoga is a practice of finding freedom and joy through the discipline and regulation beyond the temporary sources of pleasure, and looking further to deriving pleasure from something which is more ethereal, which is more spiritual in nature, which is the inner core, not depending on the things in the externals but deriving pleasure from within. Yoga is a process of finding importance and relevance in the gift itself and not the external wrappings. Most of the times we are more attracted to the wrapper rather than the gift inside. So all our endeavors in this world are more on the superficial external level, but yoga helps us to go and access the inner self, which is the real gift, going to the core of our existence and there we connect with the divine source of all of us. In that, we not only access our own divinity, but we can access the divinity in all living beings and the creation in which we are. And finally, yoga is aiming at linking everything together to serve without any expectations, but to live with a sense of contribution and service. And that's where the real joy comes from.
So Rishikesh is located at the foothills of Himalayas and the region of God, and we don't have to walk too much far, to get into the embrace of a jungle or nature. It's very close to us, and I feel like this is an ideal environment for the seekers of spirituality and peace. So, isn't it?
Yeah, this is very true. Actually, the external environment that we are in has a great impact and deeply affects our inner environment. That's the reason for ages the sages have always come to these regions of the gods, as you said, on the foothills of Himalayas, on the banks of Ganga, as the ideal place where they could dive deeper in their inner journeys. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Shri Krishna speaks in the Dhyana Yoga chapter 6, and he advises Arjun that Shucho Deshe Pratisthapya, that in order to deepen your practice of yoga, you should, or through him he is telling all the yogis that a yogi should take shelter of a holy place. Ganga is one of the most holiest of all holy places. It is described in the scriptures that on the special request and deep ardent devotion of Bhagirath, Ganga descended from the heavenly regions to the earth. And it's just incredible that just yesterday was that special day on which millenniums ago Ganga had descended on earth. Yesterday was Ganga Dashera.
Right.
And Bhagirath, he was informed that in order to get emancipation for his ancestors, if Ganga, the water, the pure holy waters of Ganga, they touch the burnt remnants of his ancestors, they all will get liberation. There are unlimited glories of Mother Ganga and so many poetries written by sages and saints. The most prominent of them being the Ganga Stotra by Shripad Adi Shankaracharya. And in that he mentions that anyone who resides on the bank of Mother Ganga, he is actually living in a spiritual abode, Vaikuntha. So, a person who just comes even for few days or even just spends some time on the banks of Mother Ganga, in that very stotra he says that Rogam Shokam Tapam Papam Harme Ganga Kumati Kalapam, that Mother Ganga can take away all the different kinds of diseases, not just the physical but even the emotional and mental. Tapam, Shokam, all those things can be relieved immediately if a person just comes and sits on the bank of Ganga. So yes, and it is this Ganga's presence in Rishikesh which makes Rishikesh such a holy place. And as we understand from the Srimad Bhagavad Gita and the Vedic scriptures that there are different modes which keep on influencing all of us. There are modes of sattva, goodness, passion and ignorance, rajogun and tamogun.
Yes.
And the places like the mountains, forest, river, they are naturally imbuing the mode of goodness or sattva. So if a yogi chooses such a place which is having abundant sattvic energy, his process of going in the inner journey becomes very easy. And therefore we can see that the moment you come on the bank of Ganga, your process of meditation, calming the mind becomes very easy and very simple.
Yes.
But on the other hand, you go to city which is actually in the mode of passion and ignorance. It's very difficult, because not just there is lack of freshness and purity in the atmosphere, but there is so much of pollution, not just the external pollution, but even there are so many people around, full of so many different desires to enjoy in selfish ways. And all of that vibration collectively affects the vibration of a yogi. And therefore, yes, Rishikesh, because of Ganga and Himalayas, is one of the most ideal places for yogic practices. And that's the reason why the Govardhan school of yoga has decided to have a branch in Rishikesh also.
Oh, that's great.
And very soon we will be starting so many different courses, retreats, and the yoga teachers training courses, so that people who are already connected, who are seeing, viewing us, they all can come and not just learn the yoga which is traditionally being taught here, the asana and pranayam, but still dive deeper into the aspect of devotion and bhakti. That's the special and specific contribution that the Govardhan school of yoga can offer. Synthesis of devotion, bhakti with the traditional aspects of yoga, of the Ashtanga yoga, the 8 limbs. So yes, what you are saying is absolutely correct.
Thanks for clarifying. So we see that Sage Patanjali has described about yoga in the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali. Yoga of action leading to union and devotion to the God, the Ishvara. So can you just summarize what exactly the yoga is?
As we explained earlier, that Bhagavad Gita is primarily the book of yoga, and it describes the different stages and levels of yoga, which is basically not so many different yogas, but it is the same progressive path, but leading a seeker through different levels of purification and enlightenment. And as Bhagavad Gita mentions, that we start first with purifying our activities through the process of karma, perform our actions without any selfish motivations. We all know that all of us, whatever actions we perform, they have primarily these 4 motivating factors: fear or profit. Some people, they act out of fear of losing something, but a higher motivation is to perform our activities to gain some profit or gain some benefits out of our actions. But even higher stage of motivation is to act as an obligation, as a duty, that we are getting so much from nature, so much from people, so much from the surroundings, so much from life, and so we need to give back. And that's where the sincere person doesn't look what benefits he is getting, but acts without any attachments or intention of getting or deriving something out of it. But the highest and the most pure motivation is to act out of love. When we recognize uh, the existence, our existence, through analyzing our own self, which is what the it begins with, that we start stilling our mind, uh, not allow the mind to be distracted by the things on the outside, but go more deeper within. When the mind starts becoming still and sobered, then we can actually focus on what is the purpose, the goal of life. We become free very organically from the different cravings or the aspirations of material wants, and then we see ourselves, as we were mentioning, not as consumers but as contributors. We study the environment around us, we see that how best I can make a difference and contribute. And why? Because everything is ultimately the energy of the divine. And when we are able to with this purified vision see the divinity around us, then every action of ours, which is performed with full awareness of the connection, the harmony with the divine, every action becomes a divine act of devotion. And that is where it all leads to the ultimate destination of living with deep devotion to the Lord. And in that way we can always, in whatever situation we are in, at whatever time, in whatever place, we can all feel that connection. So this is what I would say is the essence of yoga, to harmonize our inner world with the world around us through seeing the divinity in all creation and all life forms. And when we act as instruments of grace and compassion of this divine, that's where we get real fulfillment. And that's what I would say, that's where I would say the yoga actually begins. Yoga begins when you roll up your mats. This is what we say as yoga off the mat. And there are so many unlimited avenues in which we can contribute to the collective well-being of all people around the world, all living entities, preserve the forest, the wildlife, the natural resources, which are all given by the grace of the Lord. And once we recognize this divinity and in everything that we are getting, and see them as gifts of the Lord, that's where we can realize the fulfillment of this connection. And that is the purpose of yoga, to live in harmony with the energy, the divine energy around us, and to connect in the deepest core of our heart with this divine.
So it seems Rishikesh has too many things to offer to the people who are coming here. So generally they come as a tourist, or they have some other things in their mind, for that they come here.
Is primarily those who come here to Rishikesh, they come to learn yoga, as we already mentioned. Yes, prominently those who arrive in Rishikesh, especially the international travelers, they come to seek a higher understanding, a deeper connection through the process of yoga. But in recent times, we see that Rishikesh has also become a tourist destination with so much of uh, outdoor activities like camping and rafting and other kinds of water sports that are being developed here. And this brings us to another situation where uh, previously Rishikesh was a place of yatra or a spiritual pilgrimage where the yatri or one who comes here for this pilgrimage, the pilgrim comes with a clear intent and desire to perform austerities and live a life of simplicity. But with the development of so much of tourism, we see that so many more resorts and hotels have come up. Thousands and lakhs of tourists coming, uh, not just domestic but international, and tourism creates the problem of so much of pollution, the solid waste, and even so much of pollution of Ganga, Mother Ganga. As I was mentioning that we have this wonderful international community also developing, and with the purification that they are feeling through the practice of yoga and the connection, the deeper connection and gratitude that they feel towards Rishikesh, there are many conscious individuals from international community who are doing so much in the space of karma yoga. As we had already mentioned that Bhagavad Gita mentions that there are different stages in the process of yoga, and karma yoga is the most basic. How we, as a sincere spiritual seeker and practitioner, through our actions connect with our inner self and also with the environment around us. And there are so many karma yogis who are working tirelessly with the local communities to maintain the pristine, serene, and pure Rishikesh, clean and green Rishikesh, as they say. And I personally know dear friends like Pamela Tosh, who is working with her organization called as IndiePam, where not just organizing so many events and efforts for cleaning the places in and around Rishikesh and Mother Ganga, but she has also been offering so much services to the poor people who are on the streets in Rishikesh. So many saints and sadhus living on the street, and she offers medical help, personally healing them, serves in so many different varieties of ways for the education for poor children in the communities in lower income brackets in Rishikesh. And there are other friends like a Japanese lady, a kind Japanese lady of the name Yukiko, who has been working tirelessly for taking care of cows, doing go seva, taking care of the derelict cows on the street, giving them food, providing them medical attention whenever they have some disease, or sometimes they even meet with some accidents. And then there are other trusts like Karma Animal Trust and so many people who are working tirelessly. The Clean Himalayas is also an organization which helps working on reducing the plastic waste and pollution, and uh, overall trying to contribute to the positivity and the you know the serenity of Rishikesh. I would say not adding to it, but trying to maintain it. And I would say that this is also what the Bhagavad Gita and all the Vedic literatures they say, that true spiritual advancement comes when we live in harmony with the nature around us and the harmony within us, and act as contributors to the well-being of our surroundings. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that there is a cycle of reciprocation, that we are deriving so much from the nature, we are taking so many resources of nature, so it's our duty to also contribute back to the nature. At least not increase the pollution but reduce it. And I find that these wonderful people working in Rishikesh are true yogis, uh, and they pride themselves to call as karma yogis, uh, and they are sincerely doing their best efforts in that space. And this is a very important and essential uh, limb of yoga. We discussed about yoga as a ladder, and this is where we can actually see and make a clear direct impact in our lives and the lives of people around us. The last 1.5 years we have seen that this pandemic has actually made all of us aware that we have been living more like consumers in this world, and that is not sustainable. And so when we shift our consciousness, shift our awareness from living like consumers to living as contributors, this is the contribution of yoga.
I hope after listening to this conversation, many people will find it helpful to come here and dive deeper into their spiritual practices. And we warmly welcome everyone to come and embark the journey of transformation. So, what would be your last words?
Well, certainly, we should all understand that our minds have, so enormous potency, and to explore these deeper, higher aspects of life, and it is our responsibility, especially in this human form of life, to utilize this enormous energy in a very beneficial and wise manner. The best way, according to the Vedic texts, is to explore this path of yoga, to seek that connection with the divine, and that's what the fulfillment of human form of life is, to achieve ultimate liberation. And I can tell you, there is nothing more as transformative than to explore the inner world and feel the immense and unbroken happiness. And I would say that this magical place of Rishikesh on the banks of Ganga in the foothills of Himalayas offers the best opportunity and the serene setting to walk on this path of yoga, or the connection with the divine. And for all those who would find this appealing, I would invite them that you please come, and we are here to serve in whatever way possible in your personal journeys. towards the inner fulfillment through the process of yoga. And I think that would be, if a person who is listening to our interview gets inspired uh, to explore this path of yoga, that would be the success of the time that we have spent. And I think that is the real success of celebrating this International Yoga Day.
Well, thank you so much. It
Thank
was really a beautiful insight on the yoga and its dimension in the yoga capital of Rishikesh. And we thanks all the viewers. Thank you so much.
I'm sure many of the viewers would have already visited Rishikesh, and they may have their own stories of transformation. And if you have something to share, we would urge you to please write in the comment section your own experiences and journeys of transformation, so that it would give a much more wider perspective to those who are planning to visit this place Rishikesh when the international borders open, and the people are allowed to travel again to India and to Rishikesh. Thank you so much.